Today we are going to talk about Randall Made Knives a little bit. I'm going to address a common comment that I get about my modification of said knives. These comments are generally from people who haven't seen some of my older videos where I describe why it is I have modified a knife. They may just look at the thumbnail and think, this guy's a complete and utter idiot. First up, and in no particular order, is the Randall Model 28. It is also known as the Woodsman. If this looks to you a whole lot like a Bob Loveless dropped point hunter, you would be absolutely right. Next up, Model 3-5. If what I read was correct, and it was quoting somebody who was friends with Bo Randall, his favorite model was the 3-5. Reason being is he could get in and out of his pickup truck without any real issues, and it could be a very useful tool for more than just hunting. Have 5-inch blade. Here it is. This is the standard model. Contrary to what some of you might believe, Randall did not come up with the stacked leather handle. You can thank Webster Marble for that, if I am not incorrect, and I usually am not. I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. He came up with the stacked leather handle. I'm sure that is up for debate. I know there are guys who forged knives prior to that, back in that time, so there could be two guys making the same kind of handle at the same time, but the one who really popularized it was Webster Marble. So that was a 3-5. Next up, another 3-5. Now this one has a lot of sentimental value to it. It is the one that my father ordered, and he passed away prior to its delivery. It has a burgundy micarta handle, nickel silver hilt, red, white, and blue spacers, duralumin butt. I've always been a big fan of burgundy micarta. Randall's happens to be a really cool burgundy. Last up, and this is my most recent acquisition, the Model 23. This one is Stag. I have dulled the top edge because when I'm choking up or you're pushing down on something, I don't particularly care for the edge up there. Back in the day, it was illegal to have a double-edged knife in New York. Randall even offered their New York version. So if you were to order the 23 or the 14 or any other knife that has a sharpened top edge and you just didn't want it sharpened because it was being delivered to New York and you didn't want some game warden to come along and go, hey, you know what? That's a double-edged knife. I'm going to have to take that from you. They would ship it to you without the edge. I just do it myself. You may have noticed a commonality between all of them is the shortened guard. See? They usually stick out to about there. And that is not an exaggeration. I'll get the two Model 3-5s. See? Shortened. I find a knife much more user-friendly without such a huge guard hanging down. I'm able to move my hand up into the choked up position a little bit better, get my finger into that choil. This is not a stabbing knife, so I don't need a huge guard in the way to protect my hand as I'm stabbing something. The Model 1, which was their first model, and it was the one that they sent off to all the fighting men in World War II, had a huge guard. Yeah, you needed it then. You don't need it on a hunting knife. You don't need it on a woods knife. I mean, really, a dropped point hunter is not going to be a stabbing knife. Long story short, you don't need the freaking guard that long. I know it's a part of their traditional design, but they do offer the option, one of 5 that you're allowed to have on a knife that you order, to have a reduced guard. Well, shit, I'll just do it myself. It's less expensive. Every one of these knives is handmade. They do not use a pattern. Case in point, I've had 8 to 10 of these until I finally found one that had the grind that I like, the drop that I like, a nice fat guard, a fat but because never mind. It just ticked all the boxes, fit my hand nicely. If you go online, you're going to find all kinds of different blade configurations for the Model 28. They try and keep it close, but they're handmade, so there's going to be subtle and sometimes not so subtle variations. So I got one finally that I was very happy with, and then I modified it to fit my needs, not your needs, my needs, that much better. Here are my typical modifications for every one of my user Randall knives. Let's start here. Of course, the guard. I took a whole lot of material off. If I can scrounge up a picture of it pre-modified, I will throw that in, and you will see the drastic difference. Right now, I mean, that is a nice place to put your finger. The other thing that I do consistently is I buff these edges till they take on a nice round appearance all the way around, even on the top. Because when you choke up, you don't necessarily need a very sharp angular piece of brass to be pushing into the skin of your finger. That gets old after a while. What's neat about this one is it came in rather fat, so there was a lot of extra brass here. It was almost as if it had been a flat, squared guard. They are typically not like that. I rounded it a little bit more, really softened it up, and then I slanted that slightly. Just a little bit of a thumb ramp. Then I rounded the edges all along the micarta. Now let's talk about this 3-5 with the leather handle. What did I do to it? Same exact thing. We're going to start with the guard. I cut about that much of the guard off. Then I round all of those surfaces, smooth that out a little bit, and then I round the butt. Now, for an extra fee, you could order it that way, or just do it yourself. So I just do it myself. I use this knife a lot. I don't use it enough, but I use it a lot. If you've never had a leather-handled knife, I think you should treat yourself to one. There's something interesting about a leather-handled knife. They take on a patina and a feel unlike any other natural handle material. Is awesome, wet, dry, whatever. If you completely destroyed this leather handle, you can send it back and they will put a new stacked leather washer handle right on and bolt it down. I have already once, and it could be because I moved from one climate to another climate, the handle actually shrunk just a little bit. There was a little bit of wiggle. It's no big deal. Exposed nut. Tighten that up, cinched it up, and then just polish that nice and round and smooth again. And you're all set. The sheath that came with it is stored. I got this from a Condor knife. Match made in heaven. I am much more inclined to grab this knife and go out into the woods with this sheath than I would be if it was any other sheath. I can do light chopping with this. It is 01 tool steel, which is very durable. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to baton with it. That's just stupid because I have alternatives. I have batoned the Model 5-5 and I've batoned my Model 28 that I just showed you. If you want to see those videos, I've got links in the description for you. The only other thing that I do to all these knives is I get rid of the factory sheath. I did a whole video on that. I highly recommend you go watch that. It discusses these guys. They are a fantastically constructed sheath. There is no issue with the quality. It is a design flaw. I know a lot of guys who have cut this. If you do that with one of these sheaths, guess what? Especially nowadays, you cannot get a new sheath that has the snap or the stamp on it. It will be a plain sheath. As soon as you get your knife and your sheath, they come to you separately. They never ship it in the sheath, because a lot of guys, as soon as they get their knife, they put it in a safe. Randall is one of those companies that's really stuck in its ways. You're not going to change them. It's up to you to work around them. If you order a knife and you plan on using it, then I guess just be careful. Or if you are allowed to order a pouch sheath with your knife, which I have done in the past, I've ordered the Model 25 style sheath for a Model 3-5. That is additional expense, probably additional wait time, all that kind of good stuff. But, I mean, it all depends on what you want to do. I don't like to slow things down. If I happen to find a knife that I'm really fond of and I like, I'm just going to buy it. And then I can make a sheath, or I will find a sheath from something else that fits it perfectly. And that is exactly what I did in the case of this Model 28. It came with your typical sheath that has the little flappy thing on it, but I'm using a sheath from a Joker knife. And this is a match made in heaven. That fit in there perfectly with no modifications. You couldn't do this if you had the guard. Keep that in mind. The only knife that I have right now that hasn't been housed into a pouch sheath, and it's because I really don't take it out that much, I'm not going to wail on this thing, is the Model 23. It's probably as old, or not older than I am. It really doesn't need to get out there and get abused. Sure, you saw a patina on the blade because I do use it. Now you can see that the even older version, which was made by a different contractor, this is a Johnson roughback sheath, they put this kind of retainer on it. So you have to carefully get that knife in there and snap it, and there you go. Another reason why I remove the guards is I like to use these knives in the kitchen. If you have something protruding down this far, you can't cut anything except for right with this part of the blade on a cutting board. This removal gives you way more versatility. And it is in a castrum sheath. I am of the belief and the opinion that all larger hunting knives should be in a pouch sheath. Because when you are field dressing and you're doing stuff like that in the woods, you're going to be putting your knife in and taking it out maybe numerous times. You don't need anything in the way. Pouch sheath is never going to let you down. Ones with flaps and all that kind of shit, if you forget to fold your flap over, that knife can easily fall out. You could catch a snap on a twig, not even hear it snap, and go gallivanting or start running. Your knife is gone. You're never going to see it again. And I would hate to see that. And these are not the kind of knives that you need to go losing, because you're never going to get the same exact knife back again. And that's the beauty of Randall knives. They're a joy to use, and they're a step back in history, and they make a very nice family heirloom, because you know what? We're all dying. And on that note, thanks for watching.